Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here again, and always so happy to share with all of you. So I would like to start with the story of a farmer. She's a female farmer. Her name is Mary. You can say her name is Mary. She's a farmer in a developing country, and she is experiencing a series of challenges. So first of all, she's trying to farm, but there has been drought for several years, which is really making it almost impossible for her to grow any crops, or at least grow enough to survive, and not to mention to sell on the market. Then there are laws that prohibit women from owning land, which means that she can't own her own land. And since she can't own her land, she cannot borrow money using the land as a security, which means she can't invest. So it would be possible to help the drought with irrigation, but she doesn't have the money to invest herself, and she can't borrow money because she can't own the land. There's also a lack of quality seed and equipment for treating the harvest. So once she is harvested, all she can do is just hand thrash the crops that she has grown. So it's very inefficient, and the quality is not as high as it could be. She has no usable roads that goes to the village. So the infrastructure in this country is not very good. So that means that it's very difficult for her, even if she manages to get some harvest, it's difficult for her to get that harvest to market in the city. Then she has 2 or 3 children, and unfortunately the school that they go to is in very poor condition. Actually, they have a lot of their classes outdoors because they don't have enough classrooms. They also are taught 50 people to a class, just sitting on the ground. They don't have any textbooks, so they have to write their textbooks basically themselves. And of course, this means that their children's education is also very weak compared to what it could have been. Then another issue is that around where she lives, there is no clean drinking water. They're taking the water out of a river or a stream, and that water is contaminated. So the children often get diarrhea. Then in her house, there is no light indoors. She doesn't have any electricity. So it's difficult once the sun goes down. The children can't study, which also affects their studies and their future. Then not too long ago, her father fell ill, but in the village where she lives, there is no medical treatment available, and she can't afford transportation that would the cost to take him to town to get proper medical treatment. And most recently, and this might be in a sense the worst part of it, is that she's very scared because in nearby villages there have been gangs coming down from the mountains, raping and stealing, raping women and stealing their property, and there is no police or other law enforcement around that can protect her. So you can see that this woman has a large number of difficulties in life, and unfortunately this is life for hundreds of millions of people every single day on our planet. And this is exactly why the Sustainable Development Goals were developed. So we have 17 goals, including no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, and a number of other goals. So now I would like to ask all of you to look at the screen that you see in front of you and type in the chat, and do this as quickly as you can. Type in the chat which of these goals would help Mary if they were already implemented. So please type in the chat. I'll give you 30 seconds and type as many goals as you think make sense to Mary's situation right now. So while you type, I will continue to list the goals. So I already mentioned clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities. You can just type the numbers in the chat. Sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, and peace, justice, and strong institutions, and then finally partnerships for the goals. Okay, I don't see any messages right now. Are you all typing? There we go, excellent. 1, 3, 4, okay, no poverty, good health and well-being, and quality education. All of them. Yes, all of them would certainly be helpful, but there are certain goals that specifically would be helpful for Mary in her situation. Maybe not every single one of them. So good health and well-being, quality education, yes, very much. What about clean water and sanitation? Number 6. What about gender equality? Number 5. How about affordable and clean energy? Does she have electricity in her home? Okay, I need more people to type. Okay, we have no poverty, zero hunger, clean water, decent work, affordable and clean energy, education, peace and justice. Very good. Climate action. Yes, because there has been droughts, and of course that is related to climate change. Responsible consumption. Okay. Peace and justice again. Yes. All right. 1, 2, 6. No poverty, zero hunger, clean water and sanitation. 5 and 3. Gender equality, good health and well-being. Very good. We also have 6 and 8. Clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth. Yes, good. 13. Climate action, yes. 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, and thank you for getting active. I'm going to do this a few times here, so please be prepared to type in the chat whenever I ask you questions, and hopefully I can help everyone wake up as well. All right, so let me give you a history of the development, the Sustainable Development Goals. So before the Sustainable Development Goals, there were the Millennium Development Goals. So these were 8 goals that were adopted by the UN in the year 2000. And they stretched from 2000 to the target year of 2015. These goals, they were especially focused on the poorest countries. So including extreme poverty and hunger, maternal health. There was a very strong effort on maternal health and child mortality. There was an effort on HIV/AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. So getting rid of these worst diseases that kill the most people. On universal primary education was another important part, and also environmental improvement was another part. So these goals, as I said, they were adopted in 2000, and the milestone for these goals was 2015. So looking at the results of these goals for the countries in the world, some ways of calculating show that at least 21 million extra lives were saved due to the accelerated progress due to these goals. And the vast majority of this was in sub-Saharan Africa, in the very poorest countries, the extreme poverty countries. We can also see here that if we look at the extreme income poverty here, it's the orange. So this is the different continents. We see that we had a huge increase in or decrease of extreme income poverty after the goal. So as many as 471 million people were lifted out of extreme poverty thanks to these goals. And we could also see that because the efforts of these goals were focused on the lowest income countries, so we could see that over time, the improvement was the fastest in the lowest income countries, whereas middle income countries, their improvement was slower. So that means that the special efforts given to the lowest income countries actually had an effect. So overall, we could say that while these goals were not 100% met, they were definitely strong accelerators for progress for the poorest countries in the world. So seeing this success, the UN, after 2015, of course, not every problem in the world had been resolved thanks to these millennium goals. So after 2015, the UN started thinking about, okay, from 2015 and the next 15-year period from 2015 to 2030, what do we want to do for our next stage of development? So in a very broad process, there were a new set of goals developed. And so one of the criticisms for the Millennium Development Goals was that a lot of players, a lot of stakeholders were not at the table when they were determined. So in particular, the people that were actually most severely affected by the goals were not at the table when the goals were developed. The next step of goals, so the Sustainable Development Goals that were developed 2012 to 2015, had a very broad participatory process, including all the countries of the world, as well as civil society players and many other different stakeholders were involved in the development and definition of these goals. And they were adopted by all 193 countries in the UN General Assembly in 2015. So as you can see just before, it's 17 goals, and they are divided into 3 pillars, and I will show these in the next slide. And the target year, as I mentioned, so it's from 2015 to 2030. So it's not forever, it's to 2030. And the slogan for these goals is "Leave no one behind." So the idea is that everyone in the world will get part of the improvement thanks to these goals. So the pillars, we have the first pillar is the economic pillar, which includes no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, decent work, and infrastructure. Then the second pillar is the environmental pillar. So we have clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, climate action, responsible consumption and production, life below water, and life on land. So it's a very broad, as we can see, a very broad take on the environment. And then the third goal is the social pillar, which includes education, gender equality, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and finally, number 17, the partnerships for the goals. So a lot of times when we think of sustainability, we tend to think of the environmental pillar only. We think about climate change, we think about biodiversity, about the triple crisis of the earth. But actually, these goals are even way more broad than that. They also include the economic pillar, including infrastructure, industry innovation, decent work, economic growth, and so on, and also the social pillar, including peace, justice, and strong institutions. So when we think of these goals, we want to have a very broad and very general perspective. Okay. So if we take one of these as an example, quality education, then apart from this general goal calling just saying quality education, it doesn't really say much about what we want to, the details of what we want to accomplish. But if we then look in detail, each of these goals has a number of targets. And each target is very well defined. So target 4.1 is free primary and secondary education for all children. Number 2, equal access to quality pre-primary education. Number 3, equal access to affordable technical, vocational, and higher education, and so on. So you have the different types of goals, of targets within each of these goals. So when we look at, for example, we want to see if Tsuji's work is aligned with the goals. We don't want to just look at the goal, actually. We want to look at the target to see if Tsuji's work is contributing directly to these targets, any of these targets. And then there are also indicators to decide for metrics of how far we come for these targets. So we have a total of 17 goals and almost 10 targets per goal, so 169 targets in total. And I really recommend to go to this website, sdgs.un.org/goals, and look in detail about these goals. You can just click through all the goals and learn about the targets, especially the ones that you're most interested in. And it's actually very, very important reading. So I really strongly recommend for you to go to this website, and if someone can type it in the chat, that would be great as well, and learn more about the goals. You can also just search for Sustainable Development Goals and you'll find it. So how are we doing in April 2023? So this was last month. A report came out from the UN Secretary General, and the result is that we are doing very poorly. We are not nearly on track to meet these goals by 2030. So if we look at the green bars, and you don't see any green on SDG 1, we do see a little bit of green on SDG 2, and so on. The green bars show the goals that are not that we have already reached the goal, but that are on track to be met by 2030. Only 12% of the targets, out of these 169 targets, only 12% are on track to be met by 2030. 30% of the targets are the red ones here. So they are the ones that have stagnated completely or regressed below the level of 2015, the starting point. And another very worrying part is, if you look at SDG 11, for example, you have more than half of the targets are gray, which means that we don't have the data to be able to evaluate whether this target is on track or not. So the lack of data is a huge issue with these goals, and especially, of course, in the poorer countries that have less developed statistical institutions. So the result is that currently we are doing very poorly, and everyone's efforts are needed in order to improve this situation. So what does this mean in real terms? Well, under the current trends, if nothing is done to improve the situation, 575 million people will be living in extreme poverty by 2030. 84 million children will not be going to school, and out of those that are going to school, 300 million will leave school unable to read and write. Renewables will make up only a small fraction of the global energy supplies, and 660 million people will still live without electricity, and nearly 2 billion, so that's 1/4 of the world's population, will have no access to clean cooking. So we are looking at a very, very bad future if we don't pick up the pace for these goals. So now, looking at the way forward, what can be done in order to reverse this development and make progress on the goals? Well, there are some types of actions that have impact across multiple goals. And I will give you some examples, and then I will give you 2 examples that we can look more in detail about. So, investing in education. This has a very broad impact across many, many of these goals. It's an investment in the youth, and it's an investment in the future. Promoting renewable energy. This also has impact across multiple goals, because on one hand, it will bring energy to the people that need it. On the other hand, it brings job opportunities. It also improves on the environmental side, in the climate side, and so on. Investing in clean water and sanitation has a huge effect on general health, life quality, and so on. Support sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is typically small scale, so this brings job opportunities, it brings food security, and it brings improvements on the environmental side, both in terms of biodiversity and in terms of the climate crisis and life below water as well. Then protect and restore ecosystems. So the ecosystems currently, it's a huge issue. The deforestation in particular due to agricultural development is an enormous issue. So protecting and restoring ecosystems will not only bring environmental improvement, but also new types of economic income. Then a very important one is to strengthen local and multilateral decision making. So usually it's the people that are on the ground, that are local, they are the ones who know the best what the situation is on the ground. So strengthening the decision making at the local level is a very important aspect of these development goals. And also on the multilateral level. So multilateral means on the UN level, so between countries. So on the lowest, the most local level, and the most global level. In both these, it's very important to strengthen decision-making and partnerships. So these are some examples of goals that would cut across a vast range of these Sustainable Development Goals, so actions that would cut across them. But I would like to take two specific examples, and one is invest in women and girls. So there are two additional ones. I mean, there are many other actions, of course, but there are two additional actions that I would really like to highlight. And the first one is investing in women and girls. So investing in women and girls is a crucial, something that would cut across the vast majority of these goals, because women and girls are usually the poorest, have the worst health. They also have enormous potential. So this would have a very strong impact on goal number 1, no poverty. On goal number 2, zero hunger, because women and girls usually are the most vulnerable in terms of food security, but also women are the ones that produce the most food in the world. So by giving the opportunity to invest in these women, they can improve their food production and bring food to market. Then we have good health and well-being. So female health is very much worse than male health in many parts of the world. And women, of course, also have special needs because they're child rearing. Quality education, that would be an important part of this investment. Gender equality, obviously, that's a very direct one. Then we have decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So how can you have good innovation if half of the world's population are not part of the innovative workforce? Reduced inequalities in general, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. By bringing women into decision making, you will have new perspectives which will improve the overall peace, justice, and institutions of the world. So we can see that this action, investing in women and girls, is something that can have a range of an impact across a range of goals. And I might very well have missed some of the goals in this overview as well. Another one is to protect and involve indigenous populations. The indigenous populations are crucial in many, many ways. And they're also the most vulnerable in many, many places. So no poverty, zero hunger, and reduced inequalities, because indigenous populations tend to be the poorest. They tend to be the worst in terms of food security. But zero hunger, also because indigenous populations, they have a lot of techniques, they have a lot of knowledge of how to produce food in a sustainable way. So reduced inequalities, of course, is immediate. Then we have sustainable citizen communities and responsible consumption and production, because indigenous communities, if they are involved in decision making, they will have a different perspective on how to make citizen communities sustainable and on how to consume and produce. And they can also inspire other segments of society to improve in these aspects. Then we have the entire environmental aspect of climate action, life below water and life on land, where the knowledge and traditions of these indigenous populations could have an enormous impact. So it's actually been shown that the land that is protected by indigenous populations, that is stewarded by indigenous populations, has a much higher degree of biodiversity than traditional, what we would call traditional national parks, for example. So indigenous populations living within and together with that nature, they can steward this nature to improve biodiversity compared to just leaving nature alone. So actually, they have a huge role to play. And of course, the additional input and the additional perspectives from these indigenous populations within our institutions, in our justice system, and in our local and international conversations will have an impact on peace, justice, and strong institutions. So we can see that for some of these goals, for some of these actions, they really cut across a huge number of goals. And these can be relatively cheap, relatively low-cost actions, like protecting and investing in women and girls, protecting and involving indigenous populations, can have a huge leverage over the resources that need to be put in. So now, actually, are there any questions? Okay, so we have right, okay, thank you. So feel free to put in questions at any point, and I will try to keep the chat window open here so I can see the questions when they come. So what about Tzu Chi and the SDGs? Well, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about the importance of grassroots action. So Tzu Chi is an example of a grassroots organization that brings together people from all walks of life. And this is a very important aspect of the SDGs. It's part of SDG number 17 about partnerships, to really listen to grassroots organizations and to bring everyone's voices to the table. So there are multiple important aspects of grassroots action when it comes to the SDGs. One is to ensure that all voices are heard, because every person is important in this. The Sustainable Development Goals are for everyone, and the key is leaving no one behind. And how can we ensure that we don't leave anyone behind if we are not listening to every player on the table, every stakeholder? Also, grassroots action brings a sense of ownership. If I am personally involved in the development of these goals, in the action to make these goals happen, then I will have a sense of ownership, and I will be much more effective in my work for the goals. Mobilizing communities to take action is another important aspect, because individuals and even governments can only do so much. You need the entire communities to work together for every single one of these goals. Then the local communities have a lot of insights, whether it's the indigenous populations, whether it's women and girls, or the community as a whole. There will be insights coming up, a lot of ingenuity, innovation that can come up from local communities. And also, grassroots action is a way to maintain the pressure on decision makers, the people that have the power to make a change at all levels, whether local, regional, or national level, or even global level. So grassroots action is very, very important in reaching these goals. So now, how does our work here in Tzu Chi contribute to the SDGs? And I will give you a couple of examples first, and then I will let you guys think for yourself and give your input to what you think for a couple of examples. So if we take home visits, for example, and family care, there is one goal that is very obviously helped by home visits, and that would be the goal of no poverty. So we have like one very obvious goal. Then, of course, it has impact on many other goals as well, but one very obvious one. Tuition assistance programs, of course, it's about quality education. Then we have free clinics, well, good health and well-being. So some of these actions that Suji is taking are very immediate. Water well, building, constructing water wells, of course, it will bring clean water and sanitation to the villages and towns where this is being done. But if we look at something like recycling work, actually it has an impact across a range of goals. And I would love to hear your input on which you think would bring. So feel free to type in the chat. I'll give you a minute. Go ahead, type. Where does recycling have an impact? And feel free to start with the very obvious ones. 12, responsible consumption and production. Excellent, I really like that. 11, sustainable citizen communities. Yes. 12, climate action. 14, 15, life below water and life on land. Yes. 17, partnership for the goals. Good. Number 19, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Definitely innovation, also infrastructure. Yes. Excellent. Okay, I want to see more people. Sister Karpeng has been very active, but I want to see everyone. Come on. Any additional goals? So, my own experience. Please keep typing. I'll just keep talking, just to have something to listen to while you think and type. So my own experience is that when I went to the recycling station, I could really see the impact of the overconsumption that we have. And it definitely made me think about my own consumption. Do I really buy only what I need rather than just anything I want? So I think that's a very strong impact of goal number 12. It makes people think when they are engaged themselves in recycling, it makes them think about their own consumption. So I think the connection to goal number 12 is actually really a really great example. Also, sustainable citizen communities. We have, in particular, the recycling stations. I mean, you reduce the amount of trash overall by having recycling. So that makes citizen communities more sustainable. There are other aspects as well that nobody brought up yet. So what about the seniors that are doing the recycling? Is their health improved? I don't see any response yet. Okay, I would definitely put number 3 as well, especially the way that that recycling is done in Taiwan, and I'm sure around the world as well. That is helping seniors keep their good health. Then number 16. So at least in Taiwan, the income from the recycling stations goes towards Dai TV, and Dai TV is a very powerful force of goodness and peace in Taiwan and internationally. So I would say that at least in Taiwan, the recycling is indirectly contributing to goal number 16 through Dai TV. Okay, so let me continue. I don't want to take too much time, and let's take the next example, vegetarianism promotion. So I'd like you to once again type what goals can be furthered by vegetarianism, by promoting vegetarianism. Okay, I'll show you the goals again. There you go. So vegetarianism. And I would love for everyone's voice to be heard. I think there's a lot of, I mean, you can always think like one step deeper about these goals and look at impact that you might not immediately think of. So I think that's a very interesting and important aspect of this. So I would love to hear everyone's thoughts. how does vegetarianism? Oh, excellent. L Chan, Miss Brother L. 2, 3, 14, 15. So 2, 0 hunger. Excellent. Because vegetarian food takes so much less resources than and brings so much more food to humans if we don't feed all that crops to animals. Number 3, good health and well-being. Excellent. Number 14 and 15, life below water and life on land. Very good. Then we have 12, responsible consumption and production. Good, good. 13, climate action. Yes, very important. 14, 15, yes. 2, 3, 12, 13. Very good. Yes. Hey, 52. Yeah, this is already much better. Thank you so much. So what about decent work? So you might have read about, especially during COVID, there was quite a lot of news about the meat industry, the meat plants, where workers got COVID to a much higher extent than other workplaces because the work environment was so poor. So actually, by removing meat from our tables, we're actually improving the type of work. The type of work. We're removing the worst work and giving opportunities for much higher quality work by, for example, producing vegetarian meat substitutes. Excellent. Thank you so much, brother or sister TC. Yeah, very good. Number 8. Let's see. Decent work in economic growth. Yes. 4, 9. Industry innovation. Yes. Very good. Yes. There's a lot of innovation right now when it comes to vegetarianism. So that's also an important aspect. Excellent. Great job, everyone. Very happy. You are a wonderful audience. And I love to have a little bit of a dialogue rather than just one-way communication. So this is really great. Thank you. So I would like to end by talking a little bit about partnerships for the goals. And actually, I think I might be out of time. I've been talking for about 40 minutes, but it's our time. When is our time up?
Brother, we have time up to 8:10. So we have a good
up to 8:10. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Then I have a little bit of a chance to talk about number 17, because this is another aspect where Tzuji is very active, but not everyone might be aware of how active Tzuji is in this aspect. And of course, myself being from the partnership, global partnership department, so this is very close to my heart, obviously. So we have different types of partnerships that we are engaged in. One is partnerships for positive influence. So we are working together with other organizations to bring these important topics to the table internationally, including in the UN. You can see the UN building in New York on the right-hand side. And if you look carefully, you see among the little people that are there in front from a number of different organizations, to the far right, you have our brother Steve Chu. To the bottom left, you see Tzuji representatives, that Sister Tiffany at COP27. So COP is the conference of the parties of the climate agreement. And then on the top, you see an example of an online event, which was an intergenerational dialogue, which was online and held in English as well as in Chinese. So there were 2 dialogues, one in English and one in Chinese, online in August last year. So Tzuji does a lot of these, of this type of work, and we would love for more of you, especially since you're part of the English-speaking Tzuji, to get even more involved if you can in these partnerships. And these kinds of events can happen on the local level. Like recently, there was a conference in Australia. Late last year, there was a conference in Australia about disaster prevention, an international conference that was held in Australia. and I mean, there are conferences that are held in Malaysia, in Singapore, in the Philippines, and all over Asia and all over the world that we individuals as TG volunteers can get involved with. And if you hear of a conference and you would like to get support to get into it, then you can always contact us at the Global Partnerships Affairs Department, and we will do our best to help. So that's one aspect of partnerships. Another aspect of partnerships is partnerships to counter big challenges such as COVID, for example. So during the COVID, and I'm sure many of you were part of this work as well. So this was not just our little department, of course. This was done throughout Tsuji's organization. So Tsuji as a whole partnered with over 7,000 organizations to provide, especially to provide personal protective equipment all around the world during the COVID pandemic. And so we're giving out literally millions of actually tens of millions of COVID prevention materials. And you can go to the website, the global website, to get an update on how many has been given out until now. Right now, I mean, this COVID is pretty much over, at least the worst case. So these numbers are pretty final at this point. So we're talking about 26 million face masks and over 1 million pairs of face guards and goggles and so on. So this is a huge impact. And this could never have been done without all these partnerships, because Tsuji is not on the ground in all these countries, including, say, Italy and the Vatican. Tsuji provided face masks to the Vatican and also provided oxygen concentrators to India, where we didn't have any volunteers. So all of this work was done. A lot of this work was done through partnerships, through other organizations. So as a whole, during the COVID pandemic, we provided PPEs to 96 countries all around the world. Then another example is our partnerships for Ukraine. So here we partnered with 8 organizations, or 11, depending on how you count, to provide assistance to the refugees from Ukraine. And thanks to this, we were able to have a geographical spread that we could never have had without these partnerships, including 7 countries around Ukraine, such as Moldova, Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, and also inside of Ukraine, we have collaboration with organizations that provided medical equipment as well as food inside of Ukraine. And these partnerships are still ongoing. The Ukraine crisis is still ongoing. The war is ongoing, and the need is still there. And we shouldn't forget the partnerships within Poland, where we had over 3.5 million refugees going into Poland, and now there are still close to 2 million refugees from Ukraine in Poland. And they need, at this point, it's been over a year, they need to learn Polish language, they need to find jobs, they need to adapt to the reality, they need to deal with their traumas from the war. And all of these services are provided through our partners. Tsuji could never do this. We are not on the ground. We could not go in and provide therapy, for example, or therapeutical activities for children. One, we might not have the expertise, and 2, we don't have the manpower and the local knowledge to do it, and we don't have the language to do it. So none of this could have been done without the partnerships that we have with these organizations in Poland, in Ukraine, and in the countries around. So final words, and I have 2 more minutes, so that is perfect. So the sustainable development needs everyone. These goals, in order to reach these goals, and these goals are crucial for the survival and flourishing of all humans on this world, on this earth. So we need everyone to get involved. They're way too important to leave to only governments. So not just as individuals, but every group, every community, and every business needs to take action. And all of us, all of you, you're not only individuals, you're also part of a group, Minatsuji, and maybe of other groups. You're part of a community, you live in a community, you're part of that community. And many of you are employees in a business, or you even own a business. And as a business, we can also take action to create a better world. So I would like to give you a call to action. So one is seek local partnerships. Together we can do so much more than we can do alone. Focus on one SDG that you think is the most important and meet up with your local people, whether it's other civil organizations, whether it's with community groups, with businesses, or with local and national governments. Meet up with them, discuss with them, learn from them, learn together, inspire each other, and most importantly, work together to really make an impact for these goals. So that's my talk today. Thank you so much, everyone.